Hello, this is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and welcome to the Loan Manager Training. In this week's exclusive training, I'm going to show you how you can create your very own loan manager, and that's going to be complete with a full featured dashboard, the ability to add unlimited loans and select them on a click. We're going to be able to add payments to any particular loan and a full featured calendar that is going to show us payments due on the date. It's going to be an incredible training. I can't wait. Let's get started. All right, thanks so much for joining me today. Another week, amazing training. This week, a high demand training. Many of you have asked me for a loan manager, so I've gone about and done it in my own special way. Not just any type of loan manager, but you're going to be able to create loans, whether you're taking specific loans or whether you're loaning out. You're going to be able to add in additional percentages, create unlimited loans with principal amounts, loan dates, set up monthly, weekly, or any type of a payment schedule, and we can use this single click loan to select any type of loan that you might have. It's going to be a great training. I want to make sure that you always get the updated training as soon as they're out, and the best way to do that is to subscribe to my channel. If you like, you can just click on the subscription click button below. We'll go ahead and get you those as long as you click on the notification. That's going to ensure that you get the trainings right away. I create these each and every week. This application is absolutely free. All you need to do is click on the links down below. I'll include both for Facebook and for your email. Just click on, put your name, email for email, or just click for Facebook, and we'll get this workbook sent right to you. I'm really happy to create these trainings for you each and every week. We've done over 175 of them. And the best way to get these workbooks in bulk is with my amazing 100 application workbook. I actually have more than that available to you on the page if you want to get more, but 100 is just $37. I've got 150 available for $56, and now actually 175 workbooks for $66. I may not always have this exact offer available, so make sure you click on the link below and get your 150 work pack. That's all of my best workbooks in a single zip file. I hope you pick that up. Let's get started on the training because I've got so much to show you in this training. We're going to be going over lots of great functionality. We've got some VBA to show you. We've got a single click dashboard. So let's get right into it. Let me show you about it. It's not necessarily complex. We have a relatively easy, we just have two databases. We have where we're going to keep track of all of our loans. This is our basic loan information. And then all I've got is the tracking all of the payments per those loans. So we track those payments. Loans, keep in mind each loan has a unique ID. So home loan is unique ID 1, the freighter's loan is 2, and the car loan is 3. So we can create unlimited loans. All we need to do is just click the add new. It's going to let us add a specific loan. If we want to load a specific loan, all we need to do is just click on here. It's going to load all the information for that loan, including down below any payments associated with that loan and the date of those payments, the amount. Also, we will have the total amount, the principal amount, and the interest amount. We're going to show you how to calculate interest and principal and all that great stuff. So now, of course, we can get a lot more detailed in loan managers. It can be a lot complex. I've tried to keep it relatively simple, but still provide a full featured rich. You can take this and make it your own by adding all sorts of features. So this kind of gives you an idea of what you can do. And we have a dashboard. The dashboard is going to show all the loaned out loans that you have, all the interest that you might have earned if you're offering those loans, and if you have any loans of your own that you've taken out, all the money you owe and all the interest that you've paid in this little dashboard. That's going to help keep track of everything. I've also got the loans here. Payments, we'll be able to add new payments or select or edit payments. If you have a payment here, we're going to provide double click feature. So if we double click on this feature, we can then go ahead and change that easily. Just clicking save and update, it's going to save that payment. When you go back into the loans, we'll see the payment's been updated. If we double click on it here, it's automatically loaded. So we're going to be able to add payments. We'll know the principal and the interest for each of those payments, a payment date, and all sorts of things. So it's really cool. Let's get into it because I've got a lot to show you. I've got a really cool menu feature and a very, very simple way of creating these single click menus, something that I haven't shown you before, although we have done menus on click, but I want to show you a really cool feature that saves you even more time. So that's really cool. I want to show you that. I'm going to get to that right now. All right, great. Well, let me just fix. So basically what we have is the shapes for each one. In fact, I need to make a fix. Notice that these icons disappeared. I want to keep them right where they are. So what we'll do is we don't need to group them. I've got a group here called the dashboard group, and that's really important. That group of shape is only shown for the dashboard. But I'm going to ungroup that, and I'm going to exclude these particular icons. I only want those for the main menu. I want those to appear always. So what I did is I hold down the control, unclick those, and I'm going to regroup that. We're going to give it the same name, dashboard group, right here. And now, of course, when we click on it, we're going to be able to see those icons. That's what I want. I want those icons to remain consistent. Okay, great. So we've got that. So what do we have here? We'll go over this a little bit later on because this part is relatively simple and it's basically summing out data that we have already created. So we're going to go step right into the loan and step right into these single click features. When I make a single click on these, I want to load several macros, basically the one that's going to show us our payment. And we also have some conditional formatting. So if you have seen my videos before, you understand that I usually leave about two columns A and B for admin. And what we'll do is we'll hide these columns, and that's A and B. And these columns are going to let us know what we have going on. We're going to go over the first part of it, the loan information here. So when I load a specific loan, like when I load it here, I want this to go to true and then back to false. So that's going to be important. I'll show you why a little bit later on, because basically I want to differentiate between the changes when a user makes a change in here or when the change that VBA is making by loading in all the details on that loan. And basically what it is doing is it's going to pull the data from this database and it's going to load it directly into this form here. And we're going to use data mapping, something you may have seen before. If not, no worries. I'm going to show you exactly how we do that. So no problem. If you have seen it before, a little repetition won't hurt. Okay, so I want to also know the menu, right? If I select on a specific row, including, let's say, row 3 here, I want to know that that row has been selected. If I select on loans, I want this to change to 5. So this is going to show the specific row that we have selected. And one of the reasons I want to do that is because I want to use conditional formatting. If you'll notice, this menu, the select item, looks a little bit different. In fact, we can even make it bold. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing what I'll do is I'm going to highlight these. I'm going to go into the home, conditional formatting, and I'm going to manage these rules. And when I take a look at it, you see here we've got two different things. I've got one for the color and one for the border. So let's take a look at this one right here because they're separate because we've got different cells. One's column C, one's column D. So let's take a look at column D. And if we edit that rule, and in fact, if we see that if B2 equals the row, then we want to conditionally format it. And basically what I want to do is I want to give it this dark blue to light blue. When we click in the fill effects, we see it's basically this dark blue here all the way to this light blue here, medium blue. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use a vertical variant here, and then we're going to fade it from dark to light. So that's it. I also want to make it bold, and I've also added some borders. So let's take a look. You can't see these borders, but they're actually white. Notice the color what is selected. So for that, I basically colored the top and the bottom borders here. I don't believe I colored the right, but I can't see it because it's white, which is, you know, Excel should change the color of the background with white is selected. I think that would be a nice feature. Font, I made it bold here, so that's nice. We've got the bold and the color is white on the font. That's going to help us out. We could probably do bold italic to make sure it stands out a bit. And then we'll go and click OK Apply. So that's it for that. And now what we can do also, we're going to make those font changes. Those fonts are based on actually on C, not D, because that's where we're located. So I'll update that. Also here, let's take a look on C. What do we have here? We see B2's row, the same rule, and what do we have here? We have a border. There's actually, I want the left, the top, and the bottom colored white, and the right, I want left empty, right? Left empty, just the way it is. Now, this is the one where I want the font, actually, I want to change this to bold, and I want to change this to white, and click Apply, because it is C where our actual text is taking place. So let's click OK, click Apply, and now you see it apply, because our text is actually not in column D, it is in column C. I've just moved it over to the right using the tab. So I've added the indent feature so we can move that over. So keep that in mind. That's why it won't affect here. The text is there's no actual text in column D, so we can actually remove this because it's not really helpful at all. So it doesn't matter here what it is because we're only focused in column C. Okay, so we have that. We understand that why, based, of course, on our number located in row 2 here. So that's it right here. B2 is where we're focused on. So that's how we're going to know. Now we can easily select between it. Okay, but what about the macro that's actually going to change that? Notice if here we have only simply column E visible. Here we have columns F through and then all the way over to actually P. And in this case we have payments, which is going to show up Q through X, and calendar is going to show us Y all the way through, let's say, AF or AG. So how do we do that? Well, we do that inside VBA, and that's based on the selection change, because when we actually make a selection change, we want something to happen. So let's take a look inside VBA and see just how we did that. So inside the Developers tab, we'll click on Visual Basic. You can also click Alt F11. That is the shortcut that will get you there. If for some reason you don't have the Visual Basic tab, you can find it. Just click on the Options, Customize ribbon, and you click the Developers. Make sure that is selected. That's going to get you into the VBA. We're going to focus on the sheet itself. Loan Manager, this is where our code is going to run. We're going to focus on selection change. That means when we actually make a selection change. First of all, if the user selects a large number of cells, more than 2, what I want to do is exit the sub. That'll prevent any issues from coming up. Now, however, if they make a selection between C3 and D6, that's when I want something to happen. C3 to D6, well, if they make a selection there, that's something to happen. Now keep in mind, this is a merged cell. It should be a merged cell. This is a merged cell. This one's not, but if there are merged cells, this one shouldn't be. If there are merged cells and we also make a selection, if this is greater than 1 and it's a merged cell, we'll exit out of the sub. So keep that in mind. If you're trying to select on a merged cell and you have this greater than 1, it will not continue down because we're exiting on any cells greater than 1. So keep that in mind. So if we make a selection C3 through D6, what do we want to happen? Well, what I want to happen is I want to take that target row and I want to place it in B2. That's going to strike our conditional formatting allowed. Then what I want to do is I want to run a macro, and this is a really cool thing. Now, the long way of doing it is running one macro when we click here, running another macro, a different macro here and here. Now, essentially, we're running 4 different macros, but what I don't want to do is I don't want to write a line of code saying if the user selects on D3, run this macro. If the user selects on C4 or D4, run this macro, and this macro. So that would be 4 different lines of code, right? But what if I want to do it all with a single line of code? I can do that if I name the macros properly. Take a look at these tab macros right here. These are the macros that are run. I have one called section 1, one called section 2, section 3, and section 4. Those are for the 4 different lines that I have. Now, since they're so similar, all I need to do is change the number on the macro name. Section 1 for the dashboard, section 2 for the loans, section 3 for the payments. If we look here, let's bring this over here, section 3 for the payments, and section 4 for the calendar. Okay, so now it's nice to have if you run tab calendars, but if you don't, you can actually reduce some code using this little trick. So what we do know is our macro name is going to start with section. We know that regardless of what. Then all we need to do is figure out which one we're selecting. If I select on row 3 and I want to get to section 1, how do I do that? I just subtract 2. If I'm selecting loans, but I want to run this macro, section 2, then all I need to do is determine the target row minus 2. And that's just what we've done inside our loan manager. So what we're going to do is we're going to run a specific macro. That macro is going to start with the name section. Then we're going to base the rest of that macro name on the target row minus 2. So if they've selected 3, it's going to run the macro called section 1. If they've selected row 4, it's going to run the macro called section 2. So with this one line of code here, we can run unlimited types of macros, assuming, and this is a very important subject, assuming that you've named your macros like this. So this is a great way. If you have a huge number of items in your menu, it's a great way to reduce the code just by naming. Now the downside of this is when you look at this macro automatically, you don't really know what that is, right? But you could easily add a simple comment and just say this loan section. So that's also true. You can do that, just add a little comment, because the name itself isn't really helpful, it doesn't tell you what you're running. But just by adding a comment here, it's going to help you do that. So that's great. I'm glad I got to show that to you. So the important thing is when we do run one of those, the first thing we do is run a macro that's going to close everything, clear all the tabs. So I've created a macro, and basically what that's going to do is going to create all the shapes. So notice in the loan, we have a group shape called loan group. In the payments, as you can figure it out, we have a group of shapes, and that is called payment group. So we've got called payment group here, our payments group. And of course on the calendar, we have another one here called schedule group. So what I want to do is I want to hide all that first. And I also want to hide all the columns starting in column E all the way moving over to column AG. I want to hide everything first. Then we're going to only show what we need to. Then we're only going to show either column E or we're going to show column G through O or whatever it is. then we're going to only show that. So that's just what we do. That prevents a lot less code. So the first thing we do is we create a macro called clear all tabs. Regardless of whichever one they select, 1, 2, 3, or 4, we are going to run this macro because the macro starts out with clear all tabs, clear all tabs. And what that's going to do, again, as I said, is going to hide the entire column. All of the columns get hidden. E through AF, entire column hidden equals true. That's going to hide everything. Then what we're going to do is we're going to hide the 4 individual group shapes. The dashboard group is the group of shapes associated with the dashboard. Loan group associated with the loan section, and so on and so forth. So this will hide all the groups. Now that hides everything, of course. What does it look like when I just run that? When I look like it does just that. So there's nothing here. As you can see, nothing. That's not really helpful, but it is very, very helpful because it does everything we need to do in one swoop. Then all we need to do is show accordingly. So if I click on dashboard, it's only going to show column E at that point, and it's only going to show the dashboard group. So that's exactly what I want to happen. So section 1, first, the next thing what we're going to do is we're going to unhide column E using hidden equals false. That's going to unhide it. We're going to show the display group of shapes called dashboard group. I want that display using visible, MSOC true. And then of course we're going to select something inside that range just so that we can select. I want to select off this, right? When we use selection change, I want the user to easily click it again if they wanted to. So we select something inside. For example, in this one, we're selecting E3. In loans, we are selecting I5. In payments, we are selecting S5. Calendar, we are selecting, in this case, AC3. So I'm selecting something other than the menu item. And that's really important. So that's what we do. So each of those macros are relatively the same. All we're doing is we are unhiding the associated columns. We are unhiding the associated shapes, and then we're selecting something. So each of those sections, we're doing exactly that. The only thing is in section 2, if existing loan, I want to reload the loan. I want to reload if, for example, if I make a payment to, if I add a payment, let's say I create a new payment and I want to, let's just check on the loan, see what's loan, home loan, okay? So if I want to add a payment to the home loan and I click on home loan and I add a payment, the suggested principal is 1481.83, not add the payment, but save the payment, save that, save an update. So when I save that payment, when I go back into load, I want that refresh and I want that payment to show up here, the one that I just did. That's important. That's this one right here. So I want to make sure that we're actually reloading that, refreshing the loan so that all the payments, even the ones that I just made, refresh. So that's important there. So we've got that there. So that's why if sheet 1 B4 does not equal empty, what is B4? That's what we're going to do in the next one. B4 is going to let us know the row. That is the row that's associated with this. And I'm going to go through these in just a moment. And that is basically the row, assuming that we have a row that's associated with the database item of that specific loan. I want that loan to refresh. If there's no database associated with that, for example, when we click add new, there's no row associated because it's a brand new one, right? So in that case, when we go back from payments and we select on here, there's nothing to reload because it's new. So we wouldn't want it. So we're going to check, is B4 empty? If it's not empty, then we can reload the loan. Okay, so but of course all we need to do is just select on a loan and do that. Also, I should add new, right? We also have conditional formatting here. I'm going to remind myself that when we add a new, we want to take off the conditional formatting for the selected loan. This, of course, is based on the selected loan row, and it's going to be here, I believe, selected loan row. So we also want to clear that out too, right? When we have a new loan, I'll make sure to do that. I want to make sure that the selected loan also gets deleted. So when we clear that out, it clears the conditional formatting with that. We also have conditional formatting for that. So let's continue on. We're going to go into that right now. So we understand that's it for the tabs. It's relatively simple, clearing them out, showing and displaying the hidden columns and the shapes associated with that. Everything else is pretty much the same. So we don't need to go any more into that. That's cool for now. All right, let's continue on inside the loan macros. This is where there's a lot of really cool things happening. So I'm going to show you exactly how we add new loans, how we calculate everything, but let's move a little bit down here. So when I select on a loan, what do I want to do? I want to know the menu row. We went over that. I want to know the loan ID. I want that to load automatically. That's the ID that's associated with that. Each loan has a unique ID, and now we're just going to start with 1. So that's what the unique ID is for the loans. And next up, what I want to show you is the row that's associated there. We have some named ranges that are going to help us. Let's go over some of the named ranges that I've created so we can understand how we're just going to focus on the loan named ranges. Then we're going to get into the payment named ranges. So we go into the name manager, and then we go into loan. We're going to focus on, we have loan loan amount, and it's relatively self-explanatory. The loan amount is going to be using a dynamic named range. We're always going to start with the header row because that way if there's no data, we won't have any issues. So we're starting with E3, the header row here, so we can see that. Then we're going to move one row down. We're not going to move any columns over. I want to know how many columns. We're going to count the number of columns, but we're going to use column A to count because A is always required. That is the loan ID. That is required. We want to count with the required field, which is the loan ID. Absolutely, of course, name's also required. That's important. There's many required, but it's always good to use the ID. That's going to give us the total number. So when we use the tab key, we tab into it, we see that it's loan amount. So we have loan amount, we have loan date, we have loan ID, we have loan name, we have the loan next payment date. That's the next payment that's scheduled. That's going to be saved inside here. We also have the loan type. What type is it? Is it a loan that's been taken out, or is it something that you have loaned out? A loan that you've taken maybe for a car or a house or a credit card, or if you've loaned a friend money, it would be loaned out. So we can keep track of both of those types. So when we add a new loan, we're going to keep track of both of those. So that we want to know the loan out type. All right, so we've got that. I also have some named ranges for the months. I've got something for the calendar, months. I've got weekdays here for the calendar here. And of course, we've got years. So that's going to help us in the calendar, but pretty basic there so far. Okay, so that's it. So when I set the loan ID, that's going to be set here. It's going to be placed there by VBA, and I'll show you how that's done. Once we have that loan ID, we can determine the loan database row. If area we want to wrap it on, we're going to run a match based on that loan ID. Based on the named range loan ID, we're going to want an exact match, and we're going to add 3. Why do we add 3? Because I'm looking for the row. If we look here, if I get 1, right, our first value, our match returns a 1. I don't want 1, I want the row number. So we need to add 3 because our first value starts in row 4. So we always add 3 to that when we want to look for the row number. All right, so we understand that because that once we have that row, we can then load up all the information or save all the information using that. And then the next loan ID, in this case, it's max. I want the max of all the loans. Make sure they're numerical values. Max plus 1. That's going to get us our next one. So when I click add new and I create it, when I save it, all I need to do is take this loan and just place it right in here, place it in B3, and just paste it in the first available here located in A7. That's what I know because I know 4 is going to be our next one. Okay, so what else? We have a new loan, whether this is new or not, true or false. It's going to help us know if it's a new loan. We click add new. This should go to true. Maybe I'm not going to use this. It may not be necessary. Why do we need this sometimes and sometimes not? Because I know if it's new or not. How do I know? Because there's no row associated with that. So sometimes I use this, sometimes not. I just put it there as a placeholder because maybe you might want to know it in certain instances. But if this is blank, if there's no row associated with this, we automatically know it is a new loan. If we select on an existing, we know that there's a row associated with this. We know it's an existing. So we may not use this here. All right, so the selected loan row, I want to know the row associated with that. That's of course based on the conditional formatting here. If I select a different loan, I want to use conditional formatting. If I highlight this, go into conditional formatting, manage the rows, you're going to see rows very similar. Basically, this is the row. I want to bold it. I want to use this fade, and it's going to be based on B7. That's the selected row. So if we go into the format, we can see basically I've given it this fill effect from this medium to light blue. I've used vertical, and that way it's going to blend into our background here, which is what I want. And then, of course, we can just put on a border if we want. Also, we can do the font bold if we want. So I've got that covered basically based on whatever is in B7. So that's how we do it. Now, when we make a selection in F, what we want to do is we want to take that row and we want to place it right in B7. So that's again in selection change. So based on our loan management here, but this time we're focused on this F, right? If F4 through F99. F is the column we're focused on, starting with 4. That is going to be loan selection. Selection of loan name. We want that loan to load. So let's write that in. Selection of loan name, load loan. But we can only do that if F contains a value. If they make a selection on anything that's not a value, there's nothing that can be done. So we want to make sure that F actually contains a value and is not blank. So we do that here. If not intersection, F4 through F99 is nothing. Nothing and not are double negatives. They cancel each other out. So basically what we're saying is if the user makes a selection change between F4 F4 through F99, then do something. But also there's another condition. I need to make sure that F actually contains a value. If it's blank, there's nothing we can do. So assuming that it is not empty, then what we want to do is B7 is going to take on our target row. Then all we're going to do is run the macro, which I'm going to go over shortly. That's going to load that macro in. That's it. That's all we need to do. So that's how we get the conditional formatting and then that row located in B7. I also want to know the loan name database row. This is a little bit different. This is the same database row, but this one is based, of course, on the ID selected. This one is based on the name, right? The name of it. So if we look here, it is going to be based on the name of whatever they select, right? If I select here, I need to find the name. I need to know what the name is. How do I find the name? Well, we know the row is here. And now what I want to do is I want to get the name and I want to get the row associated with that name. What do I mean by that? I'll say I want to look up the names here and I want to determine the row 4, 5, or 6 based on the name, because that's going to help us load it. When I select on something, I want that to load inside here. So how do we do that? Well, we do that here with just what we're going to use is an index formula here and a match inside that. So again, we're going to match. I'm going to index F41 through 46 or whatever we want to put in there. It can go down as far as. I'm going to use the row number as B7. We know the row. This is going to pull the name. So we're going to index. We're getting the name out of that. And I'm going to match that name with the loan name. Right? Remember our named ranges for our loan name. These are all the loan name ranges. Then I want an exact match +3. Remember, +3. This is going to get us our database row based on the selected loan name. Once I have that, I know I can actually load that information. And I'll walk you through that. Once we have that, all I need to do is then just place the ID here and then load it up. So I'll show you that inside the macro, but this basically, important thing is this is going to help us based on the name selected. It's going to help us load that particular loan details. Also, I want to know the payments. We're going to use the payments. We'll get into that once we get into the loan. Payments per year. I might as well do it now. I've got an admin here. It's going to help us out. This is our frequency table. I've created a named range called frequency based on these frequencies. Annual, semi-annual. I also want to know the number of payments associated with that frequency in an entire year. So this is basically one particular payment in a year would be 1 annual payment, or weekly would be 52 payments in a year. Then I want to know the days associated with that. Of course, an annual 365, weekly. So I need to know the days associated with that. That's going to help us calculate our loan data. All right, so we've got that, just that one frequency. That's all. We may be adding to this in the future if you want, or you can download, you can add lots of things to this admin. Moving on. So what I want to know is I want to know the payments per year, number of payments per year. How do we do that? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run an index based on the admin C5 to C12, right? I want to know the number of payments. So if I'm going to run an index based on C5 through C12, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look this up. I'm going to base it on the selected frequency that the user has made that, and then I'm going to return whatever. So if they've selected semi-annually, I want it to return true. If they've selected monthly, I want to return 12. So that's just what we did in here. Notice if I change this to quarterly, this number is going to change, right? So it's based on an index on that. So that's what I want to know. So then we're indexing the admin. We just went over that. We're going to base it on the match. This is going to get us the row number. Frequency, we're going to match the frequency, right? We have that frequency. I showed you this named range based on those frequencies. I know I'm moving quick, but we got a lot to cover. Feel free to watch this video as many times as you want. Slow it down if necessary. So we're going to get an exact match. That's going to get us our row number. Remember, we're here inside the index. We want the row number. Then we want the column number. Since we're indexing and we want to return the value located in those weeks, C5, 1 is our column, and if there's an error, we want to show blank. This will return our payments for year. I also want to know the loan type. If there's a loan type, this is going to be for the payments. So I'll show you that based on the selected payment. So as soon as we select a payment, we can go in here, select a payment here. Then what we can do is we now have a loaned out. So this is going to be based on a selected payment. This particular loan here, we'll go over this, but it's going to show what type it is. So keep that in mind. And then select the payment days. We also want to know the days. How many days in that? Again, we're going to use index D5 here. This time what I want to do is I want to determine the days just like we did here, but this time the days associated with that. So back into the loan here we go. I want to know the days associated with this loan. So how do we know that? Know this is 30. If I change this, of course, to annual, it's going to change to 365. All we're going to be doing is running another index based on this, right? But this time I'm returning the number of days. That's going to help us in our formula. So it's going to returning whether if it's an annual, it's going to return 365, monthly 30, and so on and so forth. That's going to help us calculate our total interest, and all of our information is going to help us. So we have that. So now we understand at least this section. Let's go into the loan. We'll get into this section. We go over the payments. This is going to cover the loan. So how do we actually load that loan up? How do we get this information in from this table? Well, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using a specific data mapping. So let's take a look at this. I-5 is over here our loan name, I-5. If we look over here in the data mapping, we see L5 is associated with our loan date, L5 here. So what we can do is when I want to save this information to our database, whether it's an existing row or a new row, all I need to do is look in here, see what's in here, and place it in the associated column, whether it's DE. So all I need to do is run a loop from here to here, and then just look here, whatever's on the share, place it here. Whatever's in I7, place it here. L7, place it here. This is called data mapping. It removes a lot of code. No matter how many columns you have, you really only need 3 lines of code to bring that data into the database, and also to take the data from the database and load it inside your form. It's a great way. So I hope you'll use data mapping. And I go over it very, very often because it's so powerful. So let's get into the database and show you how we both load this, how we select on it and actually load it, bring the data in, and of course how, if we make any changes, how we're going to save it. So if I want to make that change to 6, and then we can save it, update, it's going to automatically save that loan. It's going to be updated to 6-year terms. So that's going to be inside the module called loan macros. This is the one we're going to focus, and we're going to focus on the first one called save update. And I'm going to move a little quick because we've got a lot to cover in this training. I try to keep them within an hour, but this one will go a little bit longer. But stick with me, I've got a lot to show you. So first of all, we're going to say the application worksheet function count A. This is a great way to know if any of the fields required are empty. So that's what I want to know. I want to know when I add a new loan, these are required fields. We want to make sure that we have those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check any of these to see if they're required. I don't think next payment date is required. We go into home, conditional formatting, manage rules. I'm just going to delete that rule, but it's helpful for calculating the next payment, but it's not required. So let's click OK. So what about these? If any of those are blank, so what I want to do is I want to count all the values in here. And if it's less than, in this case, 8, I want to know if it is and let the user know. So that's just what we do in here. Application worksheet function count A, basic I5 through I11, L5 through L11. So all we're going to do is count everything from I5 to L11. L5 to L11, count all the text in there. If that text, the number of cells are less than 8, then let the user know. So it's a great way to check for required fields in a range like that. Count A using the function. This is the range. If it's less than 8, then please make sure to fill in all the required fields before saving. So now what I want to do is I want to determine if it's the new loan or an existing loan. Now remember correctly, we had told you that this loan database is B4 is going to be empty if it's a new loan. If it's an existing, it's going to be full. So we can use B4 to let us know if that is. So if range B4 equals empty, we know it's a new loan. In that case, what I want to do, a few things. I'm going to take the next available loan ID, that's this 4 right here. I want to do one thing. I want to place it in here, and then I also want to get the first available row, in this case 7, and place that 4 right in here on a new loan. So that's what we're going to do right here. Loan row is going to be the first available row on sheet 2 using end xlet plus 1. That's going to get us our first available row. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that next loan ID in B5 and place it right in B3. Then again, last thing we're going to do is going to in column A, of course, sheet 2 and the loan row, that is our loan database, we're going to place that new loan ID. These 3 items we're going to only do for new loans. If it's an existing loan, we only need to do one thing, and that is to extract the loan row from whatever's in B4. Once I have all the information, everything else we're going to use data mapping. Everything else, regardless, these 3 lines, what it's going to do is going to take all of the information from these fields here and place them in the associated row. Whether it's a new or an existing row, it's going to place everything there, regardless if it's new or not. And so we do that just in the code. 2 to 13, we're going to map. We know we just placed the loan ID. If it's an existing, it's already there. If it's new, we already placed it there. So what I want to do is I want to loop. So if we take a look at this, this is column 2. Of course, column B is column 2. Then what I want to do is I want to loop all the way to column 13 here. I want to take this information, run this loop. I want to look in I5, which is here, and I want to place it right in column B. I want to place whatever's in L5 and put it in column C, and so on and so forth. So that's just what I do inside the data mapping. So we're going to do that. Sheet 2, the lone row, we've already associated the lone row either here or here. The lone column, which is variable from 2 to 13. We're going to take that information and we're going to put inside there whatever's in the range. Remember that range, where is it found? It's found in row 1 of the lone column. It's found inside row 1. That is our range, I5, L5, I7. So we're going to look in that and place it there. That's going to save us update. That's going to run it. And then we just want a message box letting the user know the loan was saved. Pretty simple. Great. So let's take a look at inside this loan manager. Now we know how to save it to the database, but let's look at some of the calculations here. This is really cool. So we've got the number of payments. I want to know the number of payments in our loan summary. How do we get that? Well, we know already, we know the term L9 is going to be the term, the number of years, but I also want to know how often we're paying. If we're paying monthly, and that's going to be 12, we're going to pay that over 30 years. It's going to be 360 number of payments. But a simpler loan, such as a car loan, 3 years, monthly is going to be a total of 36 payments. So how do we determine that? Well, that's of course just based on this number here. B9 is going to, remember, this is going to payments per year. This is based on this monthly. So that's why we extract this 12, because I can multiply this 12 by the number of years, and then we can determine exactly how many number of payments. So that's the number of payments. Next up, what I want is the estimated payment amount. Estimated payment, we're going to use a really cool formula called payment. This is a very, very cool formula. Let's take a look inside this payment and see what it is. I'm going to click on here, and that's going to go over the Excel help, and that way we can show you exactly what this particular formula is. Basically, what we're looking at is the rate, the NPR, which is the total number of payments for the loan, the PV, which is otherwise known as the present value, or also known as the principal value, FV, which is optional, and type, which is optional. So the rate, of course, is the interest rate. We're going to put that. Now, the interest rate, of course, if you have an annual interest rate of 4.5, but it's on monthly, we do need to divide it by the number of months. The NPER required, this, of course, is the total number of payments for the loan. So we have that. We need to know that. And we also want to know the PV. This is the present value, or the total amount of that series of future payments. It's worth, also known as the principal, right? Principal value or present value of the loan. So understanding that, we have just that in here. So we first need to know the rate, right? The rate, of course, is based on I9 divided by B9. Remember, number of payments, in this case 12. So that's going to get us our rate. Of course, our NPER, that's going to be 05. As we can see, here's the number of payments. We've already calculated that. That's 36. Then what we want to have is the present value. Now it's going to be in the negative, right? Make sure it's a negative, because that's going to actually turn it to be a positive, because it's money that you owe. But in this case, we want to show it as a positive. So we're reversing that. L7 is that. This formula is going to automatically calculate the estimated payment amount, PMT. Very, very helpful. Now, what about when I want to get the total estimated payments? The total estimated payment is simply just that. We're going to multiply L9, in this case, our estimated payment amount, times B9, how many actual payments are we going to go, times 06, times the amount of that payment. This is going to get us the total estimated payments. I want the total estimated payments here. That's going to get us, in this case, $16,063.34. That's going to get us our total estimated payments. What about the interest? Well, if we look in here, it's 07 minus L7. 07 here minus L7 here. Of course, we know that if we know that our total payments are here, but we know our loan amounts here, we can easily get the interest amount based on that. So we know that we're going to be paying $1,000 in interest, because if our payments over time are $446 per payment, that means we're paying a total of $16,063, but our loan amount's only $53. We know the interest amount is there. Now we have the total number of payments. I want to know how many payments have been made already. All we need to do is just determine the payments. We're going to go over these named ranges, but again, we're going to basically base this on the payment loan ID, all the loan ID based on B3, and that means I want to know all the payments for this loan ID B3. What does that mean? That means when I go into the payments here, payments have a payment ID and they also have a loan ID associated with it. So I want to know the total payments for that specific loan ID, loan 1, loan 2, or whatever. So all I need to do is sum the payments based on the loan ID located in B3. That is going to help us. So we can do that. So we know the total payments. I also want to know the actual interest and the principal applied. Let's go over the formulas real quick on those payments since we're focused on that. Payments, now we're focused on payment named ranges. These named ranges are associated with the payments database here. So if we tab over using the tab key, we're going to see that the loan ID is just that, the loan ID payment associated with the payment. The payment amount is the total payment amount. The payment date is the date that's been associated with that payment. We have the payment ID. This is the unique payment ID for per payment. I also have the payment interest amount. I want to know, break it down, how much interest was paid for that payment. And I want to know the loan type, of course, for that payment, whether it's a loan taken or a loan given out. And also I want to know the payment principal amount. That's right here, the principal amount associated with that. So that's going to help us calculate all that. So if I want to know the actual interest, all I need to do is sum all the payment based on the loan ID and the payment interest amounts. Let's sum all the interest amounts based on that specific. And of course, you can imagine the principal is the same thing, but in this case, we're actually summing the principal amount, that named range. Now we know all of the total payments, all the interest, and all the principal that's been applied for this specific loan. That's it. So let's continue on. We already focused on in our loan, we already took care of the save and update, but what about the loan new? When I added loan new, all again I want to do is just clear the contents. And remember, we add a new loan. There's one more thing I want to add to this. When we add a new loan, I want to make sure that this selected loan is also cleared out based on that. So selected, make sure we add B7 to that cleared contents. So I'm going to do that right now. B7, we're going to add to that B7, and then we'll use a comma here, and that's going to do, so we're going to clear out all the associated fields, and we're going to select I5. So now when I click add new, that's going to clear out the selected. So when I select it, add new is going to clear it up. That's what I want. So that's pretty simple, the add new. There's no button change here. I kept it really simple on as far as the buttons. Simply add new and save and update. Try to keep it simple on the button sets. Moving on, now that we have, what about load loan? Load loan, that's going to take the information from this database and load it into this form right here. So when we load a loan, we certainly need to make sure that we actually have a loan name database row or something. I want to make sure here, if I select a loan, this database row is critical because it's based on the name that we select. So without this here, we can't do anything. We can't load any loans. So we want to make sure that B8 actually contains a value. So we do that. That's the first thing. Sheet 1, if B8 equals empty, then please enter a correct loan name, or I should say select probably. But I doubt it'll be empty, but just in case, select a correct loan name. So next up, I want to put application calculation to manual. We've got a lot of calculations in this application, so we want to turn that off, at least while loading. Then of course, make sure that you set it back to automatic before the macro ends. That's really important. I'm going to set the loan load to true in B1. I want this to change from true or false based on that before the end of the macro. We're going to set it back to false. So moving on, once we have that, I want to clear any payments that have been associated. I want to clear all the way. This is going to be the hidden. This will be the ID that's associated with the payment. So I want to clear out all the way from G17 on out. I want to clear any payments that were associated with the loan. So that's very important. So after we clear those payments out, then what I want to do is I want to put the loan row into a variable from B8. That's going to be into a long variable. Then what I'm going to do is run reverse data mapping. This is basically 1 to 11. Why all the way 1 to 11? And we notice here it was 2, 13. Why the different rows? Well, the first thing I want to do is, in this case, I want to load the loan ID into B3, and I don't want to load the total payment and total days. These are calculated amounts. These are calculated. So I want to stop here at column 11. So I want to go from 1 to column. These are calculated, meaning I don't want to put 360 back into here, right? Because they're calculated. In fact, it would come to here. I don't want to put it back into here into 05. Notice, why is that? Because look, 05 is where we have it. If I put it back inside here, it's going to erase this formula. I don't need it here, right? It's a formula. I don't want to put it back. I only want to take this 360 and I want to put it inside the database, but I don't want to reverse it. So anything I don't want to reverse, I don't want to put 360 back in here because it's calculated. That'll clear out my formula. I don't want that. So we're only going to go from 1 to 11. It's going to stop right here. This column, column K, it's not going to bring in column N. I don't need it because they're calculated properly. So moving on. So 1 to 11, again, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take whatever's in here and I'll put it in I5, whatever's here, L5, and so on and so forth. That's going to fill up all these fields. Once they're filled, all I need to do is then determine all the payments that have been made with that specific loan. I've got all the payments in this database, but what do? I need to extract only, for example, the one. Like, for example, if we're loading loan 1, I only want to know the 1. So what we'll do is we'll put that through an advanced filter. And we need a criteria for that. It's going to be based on the loan ID. So that means I want the results only those payments associated with this specific loan. How do we know the loan ID? Well, let's locate it in B3. So all I need is a straight formula bringing it in. Loan ID. So this is our criteria. This is our results. Notice this is a good trick. I want you to pay attention to this. This is very important because it's going to help you out a lot. Look at this. Take a look at this column here. This is 2 columns. Notice we have principal amount occupies 2 columns, just kind of the way it worked out. So when we're bringing information in, I've got actually, look, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns we're bringing it in. But I've got in the payments, we've only got really 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 here, but 5, including the payment ID, is 6. If we add in the payment ID, it's going to actually be 6. Here's the 6. So we've got 6 values in 5 columns. So how do we do that? All we need to do is match it. In other words, there's a blank column here. Here, there's essentially a blank column here. Here's our column with the value. Here's our blank column. So if we match the column mapping, we can just bring it all in one shot. To do that, we need to make sure that our origination matches our destination. This is our destination. We need to match the number of columns all the way here, exactly like it. If there's a blank column, put there's a blank column. So in this case, there's a blank column here. After the principal amount, there's a blank column, and then the interest amount. So after the principal amount, there's a blank column, then the interest amount. I want to match it exactly. But to do that in an advanced filter, what we need to do is we need to make sure that if our results have a blank column, we need to make sure that our original database has a blank column. So when I run that advanced filter, I'm going to include column J. Column J is blank. That's exactly what I want. If it's not blank, if I run our advanced here and it says it's going to tell me there's an issue. There's a blank column in our results, but there's no blank column in our original data. So if we include that blank column in our original data, then run our criteria, then run our results, we can do that. All it's going to do is return blank. That's what I want. Then all I need to do is just copy this without the headers, copy this, and bring it right all the way in here, very simply in one line of code. So keep that in mind. So I'm going to walk you through the steps as we do that inside the code. So we've done our data mapping. Now what we're going to do is we're going to set the loan load to false. B1 set that. So now what we're going to do is if we're going to select on something, before we load in the payments, I just want to select something. But keep in mind that if I run this Mac, you ever have the problem where you're running a Mac? Let me just comment this out so you can see what that would look like. So I'll show you an error and then I'll show you the way around it. So here's the error. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this macro here. I've just commented this part out of it. Now I'm going to run this macro and we're going to get this method of range of class failed. So debug. Why do I have this? This line of code works. All I'm doing is selecting. Why doesn't it work? It doesn't work because I am not on sheet 1. I'm on, what sheet am I on? I'm on the loans sheet. And then if you see, the loan sheet is sheet 2. That's why we run into this here. I cannot select a cell unless we're on the sheet. If I click here and now I continue on, it's going to allow us. But the best way to avoid that, especially, is just to check to see if you're currently on the sheet. So we can do that if the active sheet code name equals sheet 1, then select it. So now if I add it and I'm on this sheet and I run this macro, we're not going to have the error because we're checking is the active sheet 1. If it's not, don't select it, right? We can't select a cell if we're not actually on that sheet. So it's a great way to avoid that error and check, especially when you're producing these columns, you don't know what sheet we're going to be active on, or when you're running through, and especially when you're programming it, you might want to look at the data and you don't want to be on that sheet, but you want to run the full code. So it's a great way to do that. So now we're ready to load the payments. We're going to focus primarily on sheet 3. That's where our payments database are located. The first thing I want to do is I want to calculate everything, and that is because I want to make sure that everything we have here, we've got a lot of associates. All of these formulas here, I want to make sure they're all calculated properly. So we do that calculation. It's important because we've turned off calculation here, but I still want to calculate some values. So we're going to calculate here. We'll turn it back on down here. So the first thing what I want to do is I want to get the last payment row. If we're going to run our last, in this case 11, we're going to run that advanced filter based on all the way on our first column starting on A3 all the way through I, and then including J, and the last row we need to run that advanced filter. So that's just what we do inside the code. I'll bring this down so we can see the data as well as we work through the code. So we're going to calculate it. M4, clear the contents. I'm going to clear the prior results. This is not always necessary, but it's a good practice to do that. So we're going to clear any prior results. So that's important. Then what I want to do is, in case there's no data, if the payment row is less than 4, that means there's no payment. So we're going to skip all of that and go right to here. Then we're going to do calculations. So assuming that there is data, we can then move on. So the first thing I want to do is run that advanced filter from A3. Remember, we're including that blank column, including column J. Very important. Going to run our criteria is going to be K2 through K3. That's our criteria F. So now we just want our results. All I'm going to do is put our results from M2 through R2. That's where our results are going to go. And that's just what I've done here inside the advanced filter here. Results are going to go to criteria, copy to range, M2 through R2. Unique equals false. So that's fine in case we have two payments on the same date for the same amount. Fair enough. That's okay too. Next up, I want to get the last results row. If the last results row is less than 3, that means we have no payments. Otherwise, if it is the last row, I want to get it the last row. Once I have the last row, I then want to sort the payments. I want to put the most recent date at the top and the least recent date at the bottom. Sort them. Once I'm finished sorting, I'm going to bring all that data over, including the payment IDs, and bringing it over into the loan manager, starting here in row 17 all the way down. Keep in mind that our starting row is row 17. Our starting row here in the payments is row 3. So we're going to have to compensate that by adding 14, and I'm going to walk you through the code. So first thing what we want to do, again, the last results row, we're going to base, of course, that on row M. M is our low payment ID. If the last results row is less than 3, go to no payment. It's going to skip all this and then create application automatic. Assuming that we do have results, we can then sort the data. First thing I want to do, now we're focused on with sort. So in case we do need to add the sheet back in, notice we have sheet 3 up here, but now we're inside another with, so we need to then again refer back to sheet 3. Sort, first we're going to clear those fields, then we're going to add a key. It's going to be based on N3. That's the first date. That's the first date. We're going to sort values, and I want to sort descending, meaning the most recent date to the least recent date. Dates are numbers basically, so the larger, the higher the date, the larger the number is. We're going to sort normal on that. We're going to set the range starting with the first row of data, M3, to the last results row all the way to column R. It's going to sort it once we click apply. It's going to sort that. Then we're ready to bring it over. Then sheet 1, G17, remember that's our first column, to the last row plus 14. Remember, our row starts on 17 here. Our row starts on 3, so we need to add 14 to compensate for the difference in the rows. And then we're going to bring that data all the way from M3 to O. That's going to bring over the payment data. That's it. Calculation automatic. That's going to bring all of the payments into there. I've also got some conditional formatting here that's going to help. It's going to be based on 2 conditions. 1 is their data and 2 auto row. So as I add data, our conditional formatting will build up. So how do we do that? Conditional formatting. Under the home, conditional formatting, manage rules, we see this too. These rules are almost identical except for a few rules. This one is based on odd rows and 2 conditions. 17, meaning not absolute, meaning every row inside are applied. And of course, the odd row. If this is the case, I'm going to give it this color. Otherwise, if it's this, we're going to focus on the even rows. Notice this 0. This is for even rows. Also 17, we're going to give it a little bit of a darker color. That's it. That's all I have to do to automatically have this nice conditional formatting based on the payments. All right, great. So we've covered that. We've covered the loan. We've covered save and update. Let's take a look. That's it for our loan. Very, very simple here. We've covered all the principal amounts and we've covered select. And let's get into the payments now. This is the payments. Again, all we want to do, add a payment. I want to clear the associated fields. Probably should put required. And then, of course, I want to save them if possible. And if we click here, what I want to do is, why don't we click on here? I want to load the payment. So let's start out with the macro. If I make a double click on here, I want to take that payment and I want to load it into the payment. So how do we do that? Well, if we take a look in some of the payments information, I want to know the payment loan row and I want to know the payment loan ID, the payment ID. Remember, the payment ID is here both based on the payments here. So we've got multiple payment IDs and we've got the loan ID associated with that. So if I want to know inside that, the payment loan row, it's going to be based on the loan name S5. I want to know the loan that's associated with that. So that's the payment loan row. What do I mean by that? If I add a payment and I select another loan, let's say the car loan, I want to know the loan row that's associated with this car loan. In this case, it's 6. That's this. It's this 6. I want to know that row because I'm going to have to extract information from that. So I need to know what database row it's based on. So that's going to do it. It is this in match that's going to do it for us. I also want to know the ID that's been associated, the payment loan ID. Very important. So how do we do that? So let's take a look at this. When I click on something, I want to make a change, right? If I'm making a change to here, in this case, S5, I want to make something happen. So let's take a look inside there on our loan manager and go up here, and we're going to actually make a change event. So here's our change events up here. All the way here, it's called a worksheet change event. And if we look here and on change of payment loan name, add the loan ID. That's what I want. I want to put that loan ID and I want to put it right inside B13 right here. B13, I want to place it right here. I want to put whatever loan ID, in this case 2 or whatever it is, inside here. I want to put it right here. So how do we do that? Well, if we make a change to S5 and S5 is not empty, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the found loan. This is a range that we've dimensioned up here. Found loan as a range. Okay, so once we have that, we can set it up. Now set the found loan as sheet 2. That is our loan database. The loan name, we're going to find, what are we looking for? I'm looking for the target name. In this case, of course, I'm looking for Fredder's loan. And what I want to do is the ID of it found right in B13. So I'm going to look it up. I'm going to look for that ID here. I'm going to place it right inside B13. So that's how we're going to do it. Let's go ahead and do that. So if it's found, then the double negatives again, not found, nothing. That means it's found. That means it's found. Then what I want to do inside B13, we're going to take inside B13 and we're going to place that ID. That ID can be found in sheet 2, column A, and the found loan row. That's going to place that ID directly in B13. Once I have that, I'm ready to load all the information. Great. So once I have that, now we have the payment ID. If this is an existing payment, it's going to have an ID here. Take a look in here. Double click here. Payment ID is now available here. How do we do that on double click? How do we do that? Well, I know if I double click on here, I know that payment ID. So all I need to do, and based on column G and whatever row we've double clicked on, take this and place it directly inside the payment ID here. That's going to let us load everything else. Once I have that payment ID here, I can then load all the information from here because I have the row associated. How do I get the row? It's going to be based right here inside B15. Again, we're going to match based on whatever we've placed in B14, which is the ID. We're going to match it using the payment ID, adding 3 just like we did. That's going to get us our row. So once I have the row, I can load it in. So let's take a look back inside the code here. In the loan manager, now we've got something really cool we call before double click. Before double click. That means if the user makes a double click, something's going to happen. The range that we're going to focus on is H17 through L999. So if the user makes a double click anywhere between here and here, what I want to do is I want to make sure that if they double click here, nothing's going to happen here, nothing's going to happen here. I want to make sure that there's actually a value in H, a value in G, making sure that we actually have a payment that we're doing it on. So the first thing is nothing. G in the target row, of course, must not be blank. It can't be blank. We need to have a value in G. That is where our payment ID is located. Assuming that we do have one, we can move on. B14 is then going to take on G in the target row. B14 is going to take on, just as I mentioned before, going to take on that payment ID. B14 is going to take that on, then we're going to be able to generate the row based on whatever G is, in this case payment ID. So we're going to take the payment ID. Again, all we're doing is taking whatever ID. If I double click on here, all we're doing is taking the ID that was associated right here and placing it directly inside B14 because it's been found. Now that we have that, S5 is going to take on I5. I'm going to set the loan name range. I5 is going to take that name range. S5 equals that. So that means the first thing I want to do inside the payments, again, is take whatever's inside here, whatever's inside the loan name, and place it right in here into S5. That's going to set up our loan name. So now I've got the loan name right here into S5. Continuing on, B2 is going to be the menu row. I want to set the B2 equal 5. Why is that? Because I want to make sure that we set that. If I'm moving from this menu to this menu, I need to set the menu row to 5 here in B2, right? We're double clicking, we're changing the menu item. I'm clicking here, now we're on payments, right? So I got to put this to 5. That's going to trigger our conditional formatting. So once we have that, what we can do is we can run the payments menu, run section 3. I want to run the macro that's going to automatically load the payment section 3. Remember that. Remember we had 1, 2, 3. That's our section 3. That's our payment. So we can do that there. Once we run that, then I want to load the payment row. We can load the payment. Why? Because we already have the payment row that's been calculated here. So we can load that payment row. So what is that payment load? Let's go into payment macros and take a look at that. But let's go over load, and then we're going to go over save, because we're just focused on wish sheet one. Again, we're going to calculate it, making sure that B15 is not equal empty. We do need, of course, a database row. We can't load it just to ensure that B15 is not equal empty. If it is empty, just let the user know to select a correct payment. Assuming it's not, then we're going to set the payment load to true into B17. We're going to set the payment row. Now I know the payment rows in B15. Then we're going to use data mapping just like we did inside the load, using data mapping inside the payments. Again, B13 here. This is not right. Payment ID, I'll update that. This probably doesn't need it. We're going to run a macro all the way to here, G, here, column G. We're going to run that. In that case, of course, it's 2 to 7. I'm going to run that. Then what we're going to do is bring in all the information, whatever, of course, is in our row here inside our loan ID or our date. And in S7, for example, our payment amount is going to go into S7. Our principal amount is going to go into U7 and W7. It's going to bring it all inside here. Bring in all these values inside here from the database. So it's going to load it up. So once we have all that, it's easy. Just set the payments load back to true, then we're done. So now we have that payment information in here, and we can then calculate this information. That's really cool. Let's take a look at this. Some of these calculations in the payment summary, the number of previous payments. What I want to do is I want to, based on the payment loan ID, remember the payment loan ID. There's the payments. Here's the payment ID. Here's the loan ID. I want to know how many payments. So if loan number one, all I'm going to do is I'm going to count. I want to know all the payments associated with this loan ID based on this. That's going to count it based on this, right? We know that because B13 is going to hold our loan. B13 is 1. So all we're going to do is we're going to count all the number ones here. In this case, we're going to count. In this case, it's 5. Then I want to know the loan amount. Then all I'm going to do is I'm going to index in our loans E4399, the loan manager, B12 minus 3. What does that mean? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take B12, the payment loan row, minus 3 is going to get us 1. We're indexing. So all I'm going to do is basically look up in this and determine, look for that 250,000 in column E, indexing it based on those, and then extracting that 250,000 and placing it right inside here. I want to know the total of the previous payments. I want to know. So basically we're summing if all the payment amounts based on the loan ID. I also want to know the total interest. Again, we're summing the total interest based on that payment loan ID, and we're summing the total principal. So again, I'm summing all of the total interest, total principal, and total interest based on this loan ID. I want to know all of it based on that. And also I want to extract the scheduled payment date, the pay period dates, the next scheduled payment, the estimated payment amount, of course, that we're just extracting from that. The estimated payment amount is also saved inside our table right here, our estimated payment amount right here. I want to save that here. So that's located right here. I want to make sure to save that. Let's center that here. That looks pretty good. So I want to extract that too from there, because I want to know what the estimated payment amount, and then the remaining balance. The remaining balance, of course, is our the total loan amount minus the total payments. That's going to give us our remaining balance. So we have all of that associated with the payments. Very, very cool. So what about saving? As I mentioned, we'll come back to the saving. Again, we're going to check for required fields. I want to make sure that B11 contains a value. If there's no value in B11, we cannot save it. What is B11? That is the selected loan payment days. We need that, right? If we don't have the number of days, we cannot save that. All right, let me update that to B12. That should be B12. We want to make sure that there's associated loan with that, right? If there's no loan row associated with that name, we cannot apply it. So I want to make sure that B12 actually contains a value. If it's empty, that means there's no loan associated with that B12. Okay, so the loan row, we can get that from B12. That's going to set us our loan row. Once we have that, I want to make sure that if B15, I want to determine, is it a new payment? Are we updating an existing payment? How do we know that? Well, we can know the payment database row located in B15. If it's a new payment, B15 is going to be empty. If it's an existing payment, it won't be. So we can do that. If B15 equals empty, then again, what I want to do is I want to create a brand new payment. And it's going to be the first available row. In this case, 12. That's where we're going to place it. All I need to do then is get a brand new next payment ID. I'm going to take this and place it right in here in the payment ID in B14. And I'm also going to place it right in here in column A. And then I'm also going to take the loan ID and place it here. So that's just what we're going to do. If it's new payment row, it's going to be the first available run plus the last row with a value plus 1 is going to get us our first available row. Assuming that we have the payment, we're going to take that payment ID, the next payment ID from B16, place it in B14. I'm also going to take that same payment ID that's been in B16 and I'm going to place it in column A in the first row. Otherwise, it's existing. In that case, I'm just going to extract that row from B15. B15 is going to have our payment if it's existing. If I double click on here, it's an existing payment right here, and it's going to have that value payments database row located in B15. Moving on, now again we're ready to run. In this case, we're going to run our reverse data mapping. This time we're going to take everything from whatever's inside those ranges here, and we're going to place them inside our database. Again, we're going to take whatever's in W5, place it here, whatever's in S7, place it here, and so on and so forth. That's going to bring all the information from this here and place it inside our database so we can save it. Data mapping is a great feature. We can use that. Next up, what I want to do is I want to set the row. I want to bring the row over. That could come in handy if we make updates or deletes. If we delete a specific payment, we might want to know the row. So that's going to help us out. So we're going to set the row here, and I also want to know the loan type, what it was. So 2 in the loan row, we've already defined the loan row up here into B12. So what I want to do is I want to take the payments here, this payment type located right here, loan taken or loan taken out. I want to take that and I want to place it directly inside the payment, because when we add up loan taken or loan out, that's going to help us when we create our dashboard. We need to know the total loans, the total paid interest, and the total principal for loans taken. We also need to know the loans that we've loaned out. We want to, of course, know those totals too. So we need to know that based on the payments, so we have that information here. And then we also add the next payment date from K and W14. I want to add the next payment date to 2, and that's going to go right in our loans, right? I want to set that next payment date because we've just paid a payment. So again, I want to set that payment date automatically based on that. So we can set our next payment date right here, and we get that exactly from here inside our payments. The next scheduled payment date, so it's going to take whatever's in W14 and it's going to place it in our original loan. It's going to update the next payment date. This is going to come in handy when we run our scheduling. We need to schedule those next payment dates. So we've got that set up based on the main loan table. So once we have that, that's pretty much it. I'm going to run the macro to add a new payment. That's going to clear everything out. So if I want to make a payment, all we do is click add a payment. Perhaps we want to make a car loan. We can set the car loan to the actual 446.20, which is the estimated payment amount. So 446.20. I'm going to set that up, and then I'll automatically calculate the principal. I'm going to show you how we do that in just a moment. Put some notes in here, and then just click save and update. And that's going to save that payment information. It's going to put that payment all the way here. All the information got saved inside our database. So how did we do that? How was that? How did I automatically set the principal? Well, I've done that down here. Let's take another loan. Let's do that same car loan. Let's do it. Now notice what I want to do is I want to base it on this. So we can use principal. I want to set the principal up. This time we're going to use PPMT. This is a really great feature. Let's take a look at PPMT because that's going to help. I know I'm moving super quick, but if you want a lot of training in a short amount of time, it's about the only way I know how to do it. So I try to get you as much as I can done. So PPMT is really cool. This returns the payment on the principal for a given period, right? I want to know the payment on the principal. So the first thing is we want to know the rate. And of course, the rate is going to be the total rate minus the months. We know that. We know per requires a specified period. It must be in a range of 1, right? Per specifies the period and must be in a range of 1 to what is NPR? NPR is the total number of payments, right? So in this case, B21 is the payment number 3. This is our third payment. I need to know what based on the number of payments. Third payment. I'll go over that with you. So the rate we have, right, with the per number must be in the payment is the third, fourth, or fifth, or whatever payment. The total number of payments in a period, I need to know the total number of payments. That's going to be in B19. B19 is the total, in this case, 36 payments, right? However many. 3 years at 12 payments a year would be 36 payments. That's it. That's all we have to do. And of course, and then one more, the present value, which is the total amount of this present value, which is T13 minus T14. Let's take a look at that. So again, let's take a look at this right here, T13 minus T14, which is the loan amount minus all the previous payments. That's going to get us our present value, the present value of that loan. Then what we get is a B19, of course, that's going to be, again, the total loan payments. And then we have our B21, which is the number of payments. So if you see here, I want to know all the number of payments plus the next one. That's the current payment. If we add a new payment, right, it's the total number of previous payments for this specific loan plus 1, meaning it's going to be this current payment, the new payment that you're adding. That's how we calculate the principal. Now, the estimated payment amount is very, very similar to that, but in this case, we focused on that, the payment amount, B20 minus B18. That, of course, is the rate, right? We have B20, we know the rate, the interest rate here, divided by the number of payments, B18. So that's going to get us our number of payments. If we have our interest rate is 4.5% a year, and we divide that by the number of payments in a year, we're going to get the rate per month. And that's what I want, the estimated payment amount. To get that, this payment, get the rate, right? We also want to know the NPR, the number of payments located in B19. And then in this case, I want to know the total value of the loan, which is T13, the total value of the loan. That's going to get us it. So now what I want to do is I want to put in a payment amount. So let's say, but what about if they enter a payment amount of just $10? Well, it's all got to go to interest. What if they enter a payment amount of $1,000? Then I want to set the maximum interest amount, and then the rest goes to principal. So how do we do that? That's based on change on S7. So when I make a change to F7, I want to automate the principal, and I want to automate the interest based on that payment and based on that information. So that's how we do it. We have the next scheduled date, of course, the estimated payment amount, right? We want to know that that's going to be based, that's coming directly from, of course, our loan. We went over that, the estimated payment amount, and then, of course, the remaining balance. That's pretty much all of our loan amount minus our payments. Okay, great. I know I'm moving quick. A lot to cover in this incredible training. So we have the principal amount. Let's go back into that and see exactly how we figured out the principal and the interest inside our database. Now we're going to focus on the loan manager, and that's going to be right here on S7. If we make a change to S7 and S7 does not equal and B17 does not equal false, meaning it's not currently on a payment, we're not loading the payment, in that the user's actually making a change, a manual change to that payment amount, then what I want to do is I want to make sure if B11 equals NP, then please select a loan before applying, just in case there's any issues. I want to make sure that B11 actually contains a payment. So I want to make sure that that should be B12 actually. Again, I made the update there. B12 has to actually contain a loan number. Okay, assuming that it does, then we can move on. So the payment amount is going to be equal to S7. Whatever the user just put in, we're going to put that into a double. We've defined that as a double up here. Double, okay, payment amount as double. So we've done that. Then what we want to do is I want to check if the payment amount is greater or less than the estimated payment amount. If it's greater or less. So if the target value, meaning the payment amount, right, we can use it actually as payment amount, we've already put payment amount, is less than B23, then the payment is less than the suggested, right? B23 is our estimated payment amount. We also have it here too, our estimated payment amount. So what I want to know is, here it is, estimated payment amount. If it is less, then what we want to do is put in an interest. So if it's less than the estimated payment amount, then what I want to do is I want to set the interest around. W7 is equal to B23 minus B22. What does that mean? W7, of course, is where our interest is going to go. So we put in B23 here, our estimated payment amount, minus our principal. That's going to set up, we know the principal amount. That's going to set our estimated payment amount, because it's less, minus our principal. It's going to get us our interest amount. Once we have that, all I need to do is just to make sure that, for example, let's say our interest amount is, let's say it's around $30 here. What if they enter less? So if they enter 40, we know our maximum is going to be about 20. Okay, so $29.95 is our interest. But what if they pay less? What if they pay only $20? Then I need to make sure that all 100% goes to interest in that case. So that's what we do here. So if W7 is greater than the payment amount, check for interest only. In that case, W7, meaning here, right, if this is greater than their actual payment amount, then I need to take whatever payment amount and put it all to interest and 0 to principal. So in that case, W7 equals the payment amount, U7 clear the contents, meaning there's nothing inside the principal. It's 100% interest because they didn't pay enough. So U7, so we're going to clear that out. So once we have that, now we can exit the sub, right? Because they've paid so little, everything goes to interest, nothing else there. Else the payment is greater or equal to the estimated payment amount. Here we're focused on if it's less than the suggested. What if it's greater? In that case, what I want to do is I want to take our interest amount and put whatever's been suggested, B23 minus B22. Whatever's been suggested here, B23 minus, that's going to be our interest amount. If it's greater than or equal to, so in this case, if they pay 500, our interest is going to be set to that. And then what I want to do is I want to determine the principal. The principal is going to be basically whatever our payment amount is minus whatever the interest is. So we do just that inside here. So else W7, we've already focused on this, W7 equal to B20. We've already set the maximum interest rate. Now what we're going to do is we're going to set U7 equal to the payment amount minus the interest amount. That's it. That's going to set our principal amount right in here. Next up, we're going to set the loan row to B11. That's going to set the loan row to B11. Probably don't need that there. All right, we can get rid of those. That was for something else. No need for that. Okay, so that's it. That's all we need to do. So that's it. Again, let's just go over that real quickly. If they make a payment that is less than the suggested interest amount, 100% is going to go to interest. If they make a payment amount exactly as they should have, let's say in this case 446.2, then we're going to get the proper amount, 416 to 25, proper amount, principal goes to principal, proper amount goes to interest and everything. If they make a payment larger than that, the maximum goes to the interest, which is 21. The remaining will go to, let me just put it, I want to put in 1,000, not 100. 1,000, a larger one. In this case, there we go. The maximum is 29.5. The remaining goes to the principal. So that's exactly what I want. And that's how it's going to calculate our interest. Of course, you can make changes if your loans are different. All right, so that's what I have in there. Great. So that pretty much covers the payments. Lastly, easiestly, we're going to focus on the calendar. Now, I've got tons and tons of great scheduling applications that can show you exactly how to make one of these schedules. This is already a long training, so I don't want to go into the detail of how to create this schedule. But basically, what we're going to do is we can set the change date here based on Tuesday. We can set the date based on the Monday. We can set the month here. Very, very cool. I've got some really specific trainings based on that. So we'll go over the calendar in another training, but I've got plenty of ones if you want to look up. Just search the word schedule online, you'll find some great. So basically what I want to do is I want to add in a formula here based on the date. So if you'll see in March, we have some payments. I want to show that specific loan based on the next payment date. Let's go ahead and I'm going to change the database just so we can see more in March. I'm going to go back in here. We just made some updates. I'm going to change this to 3/1, our next payment date. I'm going to change this to 3/14. They're all based on the next payment date. This way they can all show up in the same month. So we go back into it and we now see inside our schedule, we have our loan name based on the days that they're based on the payment. This is the day right here. So these are all calculated. So this is day 1. This is simply the date. It's not just a 1. This is actually the date. This is actually March 1st. So if we go into the home, we change it to just a short date, you can see that it automatically March 1st. So it's based on the date. I'm going to undo that, Control Z. And so what I want to do is I want to look up inside, I want to index the loan name and I want to match it. If that next payment date is found based on this value here, then I want to place that value, the loan name, right in here. And that's just what I've done. Look at that. I'm indexing the loan name. I'm matching it. I'm basing it on AF5. That is the date value. And I'm looking up the next payment date. If I get an exact match, I'm going to look up that column and I want to place it. Otherwise, there's an error, just point blank. So now I've taken this formula and I just copied this and I've just pasted it all the way over here. And it's going to be relevant for whatever's up here, here, or here, which is the actual date. Next up, all I do is add some conditional formatting to color it green. So if we go in here and we go into conditional formatting, manage rules, we can see that it's going to be based on the first cell, in this case, or Z6. And notice it's not absolute, and that means we can apply this particular conditional formatting to the entire range, assuming that our first apply to range starts with Z6. In this case, I've given it just a green color and I've given it a border here, green border around it. And of course, I think I've given it a font of bold. So that's going to do just that. Now notice the applies to Z6. Z6 is our first range. We've gotten rid of not days, but just the cells that are blank. And that's going to place that particular loan name when there's a payment due based on that conditional formatting. Great. All righty. I'm so glad I got you. We got a long training today, but we've done a lot. We also covered delete. Let me just cover delete payments. Almost missed that. Let's go into the payment macros. Delete's very, very simple. We covered load, delete, news, just clearing out contents. I was almost finishing up. Going to set the current date W5. We have a new payment. That's relatively simple. Payment delete, all we're going to do is making sure that B5 has a value, right? Payments is the database row here. We want to make sure that B5 that there's actually a loan ID. When we delete a payment, we always want to make sure that we're actually deleting it. So let's go back into here. B15 actually, sorry. B15 must contain a value. B15 is the database row. This is a new loan, right? We haven't done that, but if we go into loans here, double click on an existing payment, we want to make sure that B15 is the database row. We can't delete a row if there's no value in B6. So here it is. This is the row that's associated. So I'm going to delete this row, but I need to make sure that there's a row associated with that located in B15. Assuming that we have a row, what we're going to do is warn the user. That would be good. Are you sure you want to delete this payment? So how do we do that? If message box, are you sure you want to delete this payment? Question mark. And then VB yes or no, comma, and then delete, give it a title, delete payment. And then we can close it equals, right, because we're looking for equals VB no, then, right, exit sub. So in case they say no, exit sub. Great. So we run that macro. If it says say no, it's going to delete that. If they say yes, we're going to base it on sheet 3, payment row, and the payment row, entire row delete. Then we're going to run the macro to payment new. Then we're going to let them know the message has been deleted. So if let's add a new payment. Why don't we do that? Adding a brand new payment to the car loan, make it a 1,000, a nice large payment. Put in test here. We're going to save that payment, and then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and delete it. Click OK, payment is saved. That's under the car loan. So we look under our car loans. All right, this is the payment. Actually, it was $100 under the car loan. Here it is, 100. There's the payment. Double click on. That's the one we just created. It was 100, not 1,000. We're going to click delete. It's going to say, are you sure you want to delete? Yes, it's going to delete. It's going to say payments delete. It's going to be cleared out. Payments. It's now gone from our payments row. It is no longer there. If we go back into here, into our loans and car loans, we notice that it is no longer here. It has been deleted. It has been a fantastic training. If you like these trainings, you want to help us out, I love creating these for you each and every week. The best way to help me is a few ways. You can also join our mentorship program. That is the program where I teach you step by step how to create and sell your own software. We go from the defining stages where I show you how to define your customers, define your products. Then we go into design where I go over the scope and dashboard and just incredible. Then I'm going to take you into the development stage and finally the deployment stage. I show you how to create your own application in Excel for passive income. That's the mentorship program, My Excel Mentors. The link that will get you there. I've also got a link down below. I would appreciate that. I'd like to help you out. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week.